You're listening to Eleri Siôn here on BBC Radio Wales, and my very special guest today is a writer, comedian and actor who we laughed at and with in the 80s and the 90s when she starred in hugely successful shows like Bottom, Ab Fab, Naked Video and more. And she's definitely the funniest person to ever come from Llandyfri. Now she's written her frank, moving and of course hilarious memoir, Not That I'm Bitter, which is out now. Please welcome to BBC Radio Wales, Helen Lederer. Hello, Helen. How are you?
Lovely introduction. That's like a kind of whole kind of statue, like the Llandyfri. How do you say Llandyfri properly, Eleri?
Llandyfri. Haven't you got a statue of yourself there? I think we've got to get a campaign going.
I might have to bring one with me next time. I'll get one made and just put it somewhere. But I think, is it true that there's a very special shoe shop in Llandyfri?
You know what? I think
Yes.
you are spot on.
Yes.
Yeah. I
I've
can't
heard
tell
that
you more
one.
than that.
No, but it's
Okay.
interesting, isn't it? That
Well-
such a thing exists.
Well, if you had more details, it would be more interesting, Helen.
Forgive me. But how nice. How nice to be here. And it is lovely finally having written the memoir. Now, do you get the humour in the title, Not That I'm Bitter?
Oh my gosh. I've got to watch what I say at 4:05 of an afternoon, because you had me screeching on page 1 and it's too rude to share.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good, though.
Yeah.
On balance, that's good. Yes.
What was it
I'm
like
glad you
then?
found it funny. Did you relate to it? Because I don't. Because it's basically, it is all true as my memory serves. Although the lawyer did go through it, I have to say, quite rightly. I never say anything horrible about anyone else. Why would I? But it is from a world that was my truth in the 80s and 90s. And as people read the book and I get reactions, it's quite interesting that, you know, today is so different and we use different words and everything. But I just think I just want people to go, this was then, this is how it was then. And also with the programs that we probably relate to, because everyone kind of relates to comedy programs as they were growing up, don't they?
Exactly. Well, you know, you mentioned some of the titles. Let's mention some of the titles, I should say, of your chapters. And I haven't been able to share all of them, as I said, because this is daytime radio. But Thrush in Edinburgh, Two Timing, and Then I Met a Man, Husband, the sequel. But the book is honest, it's hysterical. And as I said, it's really moving. So can we go back to the very beginning of your life then? You know, you knew you wanted to be a stand-up comedian from a very young age. So what kind of things did you get up to in school to get that kind of funny reaction?
Yes, because of course there wasn't a word. I always wanted to write and perform. I think I knew when I was 10 because I was really into That Was the Week That Was with David Frost. So that was my excitement. And maybe I was a bit young for that, but we watched it, black and white TV. And I just thought, oh, there's a bit of satire. I just knew it was an exciting thing. So I wrote a sketch at school where, of course, I was David Frost and other people had to be the guests. But I think even before then, in the home, because I was large and I was wheezy, so they gave me steroids in those days without asking, because and that stopped me growing up. So I had a lot of time off school to kind of conjure games and be inventive. So then people could like to hang around with me at school, and I did not on purpose get into trouble, because I just had this kind of brain that would go, wouldn't it be funny if we did that? Or if there were teachers that kind of troubled me, I would kind of make it safe by sort of mimicking them. Not always a great thing to do in the hearing of the teacher. So I just, in error, probably got into trouble. And
Stink bomb campaign.
Stink bomb, great prompt. Well, the thing is, there was a joke shop in Folkestone, and I got the brochure. I sent off the brochure, and I can see it now. And they had like spoons that were pretend spoons. And plate lifters. Oh my God! So I did do a stink bomb campaign on one morning to see. I just was excited to see the effect of people going into assembly, and me and my two friends, we we knew what we'd done. We'd strategically smashed the little vials. And then just to see the teachers sort of pretending they hadn't smelt the really awful smell, that was just the most delicious thing ever. And it was just pure joy. But I mean, obviously, it took a lot of admin to make that happen. To send off. And so, yeah, I think I just had an imagination that had to be fed with doing things. I hope I wasn't too annoying. I probably was with the teachers. It was a very strict school.
But you mentioned your mum called you a show-off, but then that's a part of being a stand-up comedian. And then when you started out doing stand-up comedy in the 80s, who was actually doing it and doing what you wanted to do?
Well, it's funny, again, you look back and it was just, I was that age at that time, and I'd sort of done a kind of conventional job, and I'd done a kind of sociology degree to please my parents. And, I hadn't really found the thing. And then I went off on a very dodgy, strange one-year drama school course. And then this was the place to start, to get your equity card. And it was what I'd always wanted to do, to write and perform. And there were other women, but not many. And then by the time that French and Saunders, they were about 2 or 3 years ahead, had been enveloped and embraced and championed by the BBC, rightly so. Women in those days, if you were sort of comparable, were seen as duplicates. So it was difficult to get work after that. So it was a system of elites, but they did give me some lovely jobs in their comedy program. So not that I'm bitter. Not that I'm bitter.
Not that I'm bitter. This is
not
it. You
even
can't.
Remotely. Yes.
Listen, you can't be bitter. We're so used to seeing you on screen, but we'll talk more. Okay, we'll talk more about the industry. Stay where you are, will you? We will be back. The wonderful and witty Welsh comedian Helen Lederer is with us, chatting about her new memoir, Not That I'm Bitter. And it was a very male-orientated industry when you stepped into it, and you describe yourself as a comedy secretary back in the 80s. What do you mean by that?
Well, if we kind of fast forward a bit to when I became, I got offered the work like in Bottom and, the Young Ones certainly, but I knew my place. You know that, was it Monty? No, the Three Ronnies, wasn't it? You know your place, that kind of thing. And so I didn't want to offer too much. I just wanted to serve the piece. And if you think going back a few years before, like June Whitfield, she kind of served the Terry chap, that traditionally the men would have the punchlines and women would set the feed up. So it wasn't like that as much because it was more advanced, it was alternative, and they were very modern. We were all modern people, but I didn't want to, because I was writing my own material and trying to get my own stuff on. I didn't want to show off about it. I was thrilled to be given the jobs, but I didn't want to overstep. So I was very respectful. That's how I remember it, not kind of not pulling any ego thing, because Rick and A, they'd written the thing and it was their shout. And again, with Ab Fab, it was Jennifer's shout. I was just pleased to be there, but it was their shout, if you see what I mean.
And what about stepping on to stage as well, doing your stand-up back then? Because you talk about, you had to deal with sexism and some really rude remarks from male audiences. What was it like? And what made you return to that stage? Because many would have just not returned.
Well, I think it's a really good point, Meg. And any advice to anyone, I mean, you've got to really want to do it. And I look back at that time, when you start in a career, you have to want to do it passionately. I mean, and for some reason I did. I was driven to do it, and I'd buy the stage newspaper, look for jobs, phone people, like, oh my Lord. So I wanted it. Obviously I got nervous. I think I was just very naive and very devoted to what I was doing at that time. That's how I remember it. So I didn't go around going, oh, it's unfair, because that was the world I was in. I just wanted to crack on as best I could. I did 5 years of the stand-up, and then I got invited to do audition for a radio series. And as soon as you sort of say BBC Radio 4, people start to be slightly nicer to you. So, that awful thing about status, people kind of need to be made to feel comfortable, especially if you're a woman in comedy. They kind of go, oh, right, you're a stand-up. Oh, so what, you did a gig, what, in Deptford? okay. Mm-mm. And then I couldn't remember the reason writing it. I partly complete ego because I'm so old now. I just wanted to remind myself and anyone else, should they be interested, that I was actually doing stand-up, because
Yeah.
it isn't an easy thing for me to do,
Yeah.
even now. But as an old person, I try less. And I don't know about you, but don't you think if someone is really trying, it's not funny? It's just got to be authentic, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We all laugh at different things.
Yeah, I think my role model is Miriam Margolyes.
Oh, yes.
I want to be like her when I'm 80. I don't want to
Well,
care a yacht about
potty mouth.
anything.
Potty
Well,
mouth.
yes, I'm halfway there
yeah.
anyway.
Well, I agree with your aspiration. I think I'd like to be like her, but are we that kind of relative that sits at a family gathering and you go, uh-oh, what's going to come out of her mouth next? Slightly awkward relative. Could she just leave the room, please? It's kind of, you don't quite know shockability, but I've got a version of that. But then I worry about it hugely afterwards, because when I did one of my many sort of therapy counsel sessions over the years, I think my one therapist said, Helen, you've got above average anxiety, like I was supposed to be pleased. I'd scored highly on that. So I do sort of worry how I come across, whereas lovely, beautiful Miriam clearly just does it.
It does.
Yeah.
I've got to talk to you about your recent call-up to Coronation Street.
Yeah.
And you played the... love in, can we say love
I had
interest?
a name, which is a joy to have a name as a character. Yes.
And if anybody hasn't maybe tuned into Coronation Street recently, Ken Barlow, of course, legend, played by William Roach, known once for being Weatherfield's biggest Lothario, but still wanted to prove there was still life in the old dog yet at the age of 91. And you
Amazing.
come in on a speed dating evening. What was it like dating Ken Barlow, Helen?
Oh, well, it was just thoroughly lovely. I have to say, it was thoroughly lovely. One didn't notice the age difference. He made me feel 30, which is a gift. And he was actually, people just have a presence. I think Harrison Ford would be similar. They've got that presence, lots of lovely hair, and that way of making you feel that you're the only person in the room, which is a great trait to have.
Oh, wow.
So I loved it.
Well, let's hope more dates will happen,
Yes.
of course. But,
Standing by.
Well, good guess. Can't wait to see you back there. But we're both Welsh, but we also have something else in common, which is wine. Now then, you are more than a wine enthusiast. You're an expert, you're a columnist, you're a judge. You know your grapes.
Yes.
What are you enjoying at the moment?
Right. No, that's interesting. I won't dispute any of that, obviously, because I did get asked to be the wine columnist many years ago now in the Express magazine. And I said, oh, why me? And they said, well, we wanted a familiar face who looked like they like a glass of wine. So I thought, okay, well, that's true. And then having done the column, I thought I'm going to go on a course. So I went on a course. And there's some lovely, what's interesting about Wales is that you were there at the very beginning of the Cariad. There's about 3 vineyards I've been to with that mix of grape that does the fizzy white wine. And I mean, to me, fizzy white wine, particularly Welsh fizzy white wine, is just heaven, because it's a fizz does something for me, just I love. And the fact that it's grown on that soil, I mean, it's just doing so well.
Yeah.
But, no, I do like a glass of wine. Do you?
Oh, yes. Can we meet up? Can we meet up one night?
Yes, a large one.
Yes.
Large one.
Okay, it's a date. Unless Ken Barlow comes in before me.
We could share him.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, 91. 80 is my cut-off point. Listen, Helen, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your beautiful memoir. If you love comedy, if you love honesty, and if you love a bit of, I was your father, whatever, you're going to love this. You take care, Helen.
And you. See you for a glass very soon.
Ching, ching. Bye.
Ching, ching.
And you can get Helen Lederer's powerful and funny memoir now, and it's called Not That I'm Bitter.